Hi, this is Todd Schultz, and this is Lesson 1 in Project Management 101, where we're going to schedule a bare bones project using Microsoft Project Manager. This comes out of the Hull College's Information and Decision Technologies group, and if you want more information about what's going on, visit mis.og.edu. Okay, well, a couple of disclaimers up front. Using project management software, and Microsoft's Project Manager is a good example, is not project management. Project management is about the communications, the control, the planning, everything that goes into making a particular project complete. When I say project, I'm talking about a particular operational environment. Academically, we divide operational environments roughly into three categories. Flow shops or flow activities, things like maybe a petroleum distillery or a car manufacturer where it's high volume of identical goods. A gallon of gas is a gallon of gas, and so think about gasoline flowing out, and managing that takes a certain kind of skill set. Another, broadly speaking, operational environment is a job shop, something where perhaps a batch manufacturer gets set up for making a certain kind of window frames, certain height, certain width, depth, kind of wood, how the sashes work, and then they turn out a moderate number, maybe 30, 50, 100 of those windows, and then maybe they configure for something else. And so that takes a different skill set than a flow shop, okay, to manage a job shop. And in a project shop or a project instance, we usually have one unique product and a set of tasks and efforts that go into making that product come out. And that even applies, you might say, putting up, constructing a building or a house, even if you're using the same plans, that particular lot, the particular weather you run into when you're doing it, all make something that's a unique type of experience. And so it's managing that project management is about. And so it really is the communication and control are project management. So not only are we not doing project management, before we can use the project management software, we're going to see that the project manager has to have done a ton of work. We're going to say, oh, well, we know what tasks need to be completed. We know how long they're going to take, more or less. We know what the predecessor, what needs to happen first and second. And if we know all that, then we can put it in a project management software and get some helpful results. So I'm not saying project management software is useless, but it takes a great deal of project management up front before you can start getting results. And a third disclaimer, especially in Lesson 1, this is not developing a deep expertise in using Microsoft Project Manager. We're going to get exposed to some great ideas, and it is an incredibly empowering tool in the right hands with the right background. So we won't be doing, don't call yourself a project management or a project manager or a Microsoft Project Manager software expert after this one lesson, but you can say, yes, I have exposure to. So what is the paradigm? How do these unique project kinds of operations get set up? The paradigm is the idea that a project is a set of tasks, okay, and milestones. What a task is some unit of work, dig a basement, okay, in a construction project with some known duration, or maybe it's estimated. We know roughly how long that's going to take, okay? So we know what tasks need to be completed. Milestone's a little bit like a task, but a milestone is some point in time that we acknowledge in a project. Maybe it's when the rough-in construction on a building is complete and we get an inspection before we start closing in the walls or something like that. So milestone is usually not a duration, it's a specific point in time. It turns out that the project manager software will let you identify something that has a duration as a milestone, and then you maybe think the end of that activity is the milestone or point in time. But realize there's milestones and tasks, and we know what they are, how long the tasks take, but thirdly, almost in terms of the set of information, we know we know the dependencies. We know which tasks need to precede other tasks, right? You don't frame in before you've dug the basement. You don't put in the wiring before you've got the rough in on construction of the walls in a house. there are these dependencies that need to take place, and so it's the fact that one activity follows from other activities that is really the heart of planning a project. Well, let's take a look at an example that we'll be working with. It's a system design project. It comes from information systems, my background, but project management has a very, very wide applicability outside of information systems. But here are the milestones and tasks that the project manager has identified that need to be completed. Furthermore, there's a duration estimated for all of the milestones and tasks, and the predecessors. And we're going to talk through what all these mean, but back when I said a whole lot of project management needs to take place before you get into project management software, this is what I'm talking about. This is this definition, the understanding that it took to know that these are the tasks, how long they'll take, what the relationship of, that's where the project management is getting done. Now we can and will turn these over to project management software and get some insight into our project, and that's a good thing, but opening up Project Manager is not going to say, oh, by the way, you need to do a feasibility study that's going to take about 10 days. But let's look at what the project manager has laid out. So we have this milestone. It's got 0 duration, so there's some point in time where we begin the initiation. Okay, probably, we should have gotten a sign off, probably some idea we're going to get paid for this or compensated. It's okay by the customer to begin and all that kind of thing. Well, that's hidden in this milestone. There are some tasks, and I've done some indenting to identify, or the project manager has, kind of what are the phases. Sometimes I'll interchangeably use phases, tasks, and activities. A lot of times I think of a phase as a collection of tasks, or sort of a meta task. So the initiation aspect or section of this project involves doing some background research, estimated to take 12 days, and it can begin, its predecessors is this begin initiation milestone. So it can begin as soon as we're, have the okay to begin the initiation. There's a feasibility study, estimated to take 10 days. It can also begin when we get the go-ahead. This milestone's been reached. Interview customers, 15 days. It also, per the project manager's understanding of how this is all going to come out, starts after begin initiation. So we've identified 3 activities, 3 tasks, and if we look at it, the way it's planned, they can be going on in parallel. For now, we're going to assume we have enough resources to actually schedule those in parallel. If each of these took full-time involvement of an analyst, and we had 1 analyst, well, we couldn't really do 3 of those at the same time because we only have the 1 analyst. The analyst can be doing 1 thing. That analyst is something called a resource. And we'll be looking at how do we bring in resources and level resources a little bit in a project. But for now, we're going to assume that we have enough resources that if activities, tasks can be done in parallel, then we can do them in parallel. And we're looking for the quickest time that this project could get completed. Okay? So then there's this approve initiation. It's listed as a milestone, even though it takes, it spans a day. What we're assuming, maybe we have a meeting, walk through, here are the results, the client signs off and says this is what we're asking for. And notice its predecessors are all the initiation tasks. So we need to complete background research, feasibility study, interview customers before we can take the day to do the approve initiation. Okay. Then there's a begin requirements milestone that happens after we approve the initiation. A problem definition needs assessment have a few days for each. They can both begin, per the project manager, after begin requirements. Okay? And then there's an approve requirements milestone, but it's really kind of a task because we take a day to make sure things are right. In the design phase, okay, that has developed specifications and the conceptual design in it, then it has a little bit of a difference than what we've seen before. We can start developing specifications as soon as we get the go-ahead to begin design. But notice the conceptual design, per the project manager, is going to need the specifications in hand. So they put develop specifications as the predecessor, and so it means that these two can't go on in parallel. This guy is going to follow that we'll see how this all plays out using the project manager. But this set of predecessors, as long as you don't do something strange like have this depend on that and this depend on that, is really up to the project manager. What the software will do is help you calculate how long things will take for a particular project. Well, a lot of this maybe becomes tons clearer if we just jump in and actually try to do this and see what it looks like. So let's get off the edge of the pool and dive in the water and see how all this works out. To actually do a project, realize once you've installed project management software, or if it's installed on the computer, it really is part of kind of the extended Office. And when you install it, it's going to fall in under Microsoft Office and Microsoft Project 2010. There we are. Notice it says new tasks, and it just kind of flashed up something here. And I'm going to concentrate on it now. I think for where we are, it's best to, and I've just clicked down to our new tasks, to use what's called auto scheduling. That means if we change something about a task length or a predecessor or a start date or something, then Microsoft Project Manager, the software, will automatically reschedule the project. And I think that's the best way to start. There might be times when you'd like to change a bunch of things and then recalculate on your own. That's when manually scheduling works out. So maybe make sure your new tasks auto-scheduled is set. I'm going to give myself a little more room. When you start Project Manager, it kind of is going to assume that you have this paradigm going, that you have a task name, a duration. Now, I'd almost suggest hiding the start and finish columns, and you can hide or reveal a column by right-clicking on the column and hide. And the reason I suggest hiding those, and I'm going to hide the resource name as well, the reason I suggest hiding those is we don't want to plug in the start times. We want Project Manager to figure out the start and end dates for things. So I'm starting on our project. We had begin initiation. It's got a 0-day duration. And notice when I put that in, and over here on the right, we're getting what's called a Gantt chart. It's named after a ML Gantt, some person whose last name was Gantt. That's a particular kind of chart. Now I happen to be doing this on the, I guess I'm on the 19th of January that I'm doing this, and so it put a particular milestone right here, 0 duration, a point in time where this is beginning. Now we'll look at ways to, well, what if I don't want to start now? I'm planning now and we're going to start in the future. We'll come back and work on the project start date down the road. But for now, let's just go ahead and let it do what it's going to assume. It will think that you're starting on whatever day you happen to be entering in the data and run with it. And it knew it was a milestone because of the 0 duration. We have background research that we think is going to take 12 days. Okay? And its predecessor, if we think back to our project, was the begin initiation. Okay? And the way you get the predecessors in Project Manager is to put the number of the task or tasks separated by commas. We'll see how, if it's more than one, how it comes here. So this predecessor 1 says, oh, I'm looking back at task 1, and background research can follow on after begin initiation. Then there's a feasibility study that takes 10 days. We think it also begins after task 1. There's interview customers. We think is going to take 15 days. You see how having all this stuff that the project manager did for us just makes, entering a project is pretty straightforward. And then we have approve initiation that we think is going to take 1 day. And now it says this needs to follow all the all the initiation tasks. And so that's task 2, 3, and 4. And I suggest you put them all in. Okay, somebody might and you can see a little bit of what's happening if we look over here at the project display. You know, the approve initiation is coming in here, and you might say, well, why put 2, 3, and 4 when I can tell by looking at these 3 durations, and since they go on in parallel, that it's going to be 15 days. Shouldn't I just put 4 because it's going to have to follow on interview customers? Well, you know, the project manager might decide after, you know, some more research that, oh, that's going to take 20 days. And if you say 2, 3, 4 here, when you change that, notice that the project manager software said, okay, it's coming after the latest of those. So I guess my advice is define the project in as general a terms as you can, and don't try to guess when something's going to happen or what the longest task is. Just say we can approve initiation when these are all 3 done, and just choose the latest of them, and don't try to figure that out yourself. Now, this is showing up as an activity. See that little snigget there? If I want, because I think of approve initiation as a milestone, to make it a milestone, even though it has duration, if I right-click, then there's an information about the task that comes up, and I think it's on advanced. We can say mark this task as a milestone. And so, and you can see there's lots of stuff that goes on about tasks, and that just says, okay, mark it as a point in time when we're going to be done. And so it knows it takes that day, but at the end of the day, we have finished it. So that just marks it as a milestone. Okay, well, I'm going to put in the rest of the information and maybe blab while I do it. 0 days. Now realize that begin requirements does have a predecessor. It's that approve initiation. So kind of, you know, there are very few activities that will be blank here. They're the ones that can begin without any other work being done, but we can't begin the requirements till after 5. And notice it kind of have 2 back-to-back milestones, and that's not a problem. Everybody will understand problem definition, what's going on there. Problem definition that we thought took 3 days. It can begin after 6, which is begin requirements, and needs assessment begins, it takes 5 days. It also is after begin requirements, and then there's approve requirements. We think it's 1 day. It follows 7, 8. Also getting on there, right-clicking, information, advanced tab, mark as milestone, just because I want to see that as a milestone. Now we're starting to get some, to me, interesting information. You know, one thing, if I look over at the calendar or the Gantt chart, built in to the calendar is the idea that Saturday and Sunday are not work days. And we'll look at it in another lesson. Well, what about holidays? If I needed to schedule holidays or we had a different sort of work calendar, you can adjust that. So, you know, something to take note of, even though we'll take feasibility study, which is here, it takes 12 days. You know, you might say, gosh, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12, 13, 14, a bunch more days for that, but it only takes 10 days. Even though it's going through the weekends, it doesn't count those days because this built-in calendar thinks the weekends aren't work days. Now there's ways, if no, God darn it, we're working 7 days a week, you can make that. So realize while it's spanning this, the work days, turned out to be there are 3 in this week, 5 in that week, 2 in that week to make the 10. But here's the thing, we don't have to calculate all of that. Realize that the project manager software is doing it for us. And if we kind of come down and score it out, I was saying we get some management information. We now have the idea that as long as we can do these activities in parallel, we have enough resources. And if we're taking Saturday and Sunday as holidays, and these are the right estimates, and these is the right precedence structure, then we can be expected to be approving requirements on the 17th of February. if we begin on the 19th, and we'll talk about when we begin and that kind of thing down the road. Let me get the rest of this in. Begin design. Takes 0 days. It's an honest to goodness milestone, but it's a milestone that follows something. It's a design. We follow that. Then we develop specifications, and we think that's going to take 14 days, and it begins after 10 after we begin design. And here's about the only new trick that we hadn't seen in terms of entering a basic project. Conceptual design, we think it's going to take 5 days, but we think it's going to follow on to develop specifications. Well, no problem there. You just put in the task or tasks that it follows, but we're getting a kind of a different look over here where one activity follows on another. And so that's the thing about projects quite often is you can't do things in parallel. You need the information from the developing the specs to do the design. Okay, at least per the project manager. In this case, you might quibble, well, you don't really need all the specs before you can begin a design, and in some cases that's true. We'll have a future lesson about how to do something about that, but let me just get this bare bones in. Begin design takes 1 day. It follows 11 and 12. And see, this way we just kind of say it's after this and this, and we don't have to quibble and worry about which will finish first. We're just telling the project management software, you figure out which finishes first. And last, this one was to be marked as a milestone. Okay, we've come a long way. I'm going to save myself a copy now. So save, and I think I asked you to call this SUP 01. And the extension for Microsoft project files is MPP. So great. Now I've got that saved, and that's pretty much the project plan. If we started, we'd be done. Faith in Megora would be done by St. Patty's Day. If we began on the 19th of January, and we follow this calendar, and these are the right things, and nothing takes longer or shorter. But again, those are all the assumptions. Now, if you have, as is in your case, a different starting date, the best way to kind of think about a project starting at a different time is I've clicked on the project tab up here, and in project information, you can put in the start date. And I've suggested that you start on the day after your birthday, okay, your next birthday. Mine happens to be March 20th. And even if you say we're born on March 19th, go ahead, don't make it the day after your birthday. If that's a Saturday or Sunday or tends to be a holiday, project manager will schedule around it. Don't sort of think, gee, the day after my birthday is on a weekend, so I don't start till that next Monday. So there we go. And there are a lot of assumptions about this project that are going on, about everything starting at its earliest time, and some things like that. We're just going to live with those. But what we have now are some information. If we start on the 21st of March with this project and everything goes as planned, then it's going to be 5/17 that I'm expected to finish. Okay, and you have times when each of these activities will finish, and you can plan on, well, when are we going to start specs? Well, we can start the developing specifications. We think that'll be the 19th of April. So we're getting a lot of project information out of this. So nothing wrong there, but it's doing the calculating and returning it over to Project Manager. Now, what happens sometime, and I don't know that I demanded this in the spec, but sometimes this list gets awful long and detailed. We might want to insert phases here. So I'm going to insert a task, call it initiation, but what I'd like are the activities that are part of initiation to be kind of included as part of the initiation, and really just sort of collapse, if I want, kind of all these things into this thing called initiation. So I stuck initiation by just right-clicking and saying New Task, okay? And I've highlighted these, gotten back to the Task tab, and if I indent, okay, now what I've done is I've defined this header called initiation, and project manager said, well, it's going to take 16 days. Why? It says 15 days for the longest activities plus 1, and in some ways I can collapse and, kind of in a summary point of view, the initiation is going to take all the way out to here. And so sometimes you just want to look at that, kind of high-level view. Other times you'll want to dive into details. So whenever you get more than about 8 or 10 activities sometimes in milestones, it's nice to then break it up into phases, and you can do this outlining it to many levels. So I'm going to right click here and insert a task, and this is requirements. And the way Project Manager understands is anything that's indented underneath something else is really a subtask. So now make sure you're on the task tab and indent, so it understands, oh, everything you've indented under here is part of it. If you make a mistake and say, oh gosh, I included something that I didn't need to include, if you back out in it, you'll see it's no longer part of the thing. Oh, but I was right the first time, indent it, and it is part of the thing. Okay, and so a handy thing, design, and so these really aren't new tasks. What they are, by the way I'm doing the indenting, is I've now kind of got a streamlined view of my entire project that kind of talks about the tasks and phases, and we can go from there. But you can always expand it up and expand it down. Okay, so I'm going to open everything back up, double check that I've got my project start date to be kind of where I'm thinking of starting, and so that's March the 21st for me. I think I've asked you to do your day after your birthday, so everybody has a slightly different project. Woohoo! You got a couple of other changes to make, but that's pretty much it. I want to make sure I save that before I kind of go on with my talk. So we're kind of done with the demo. I think I got a few follow-up points, and this is just the beginning. We haven't really begun to scratch the surface. We haven't talked about Slack and critical path. I've mentioned calculators. What if our actual time is shorter or longer? What if we're making changes in the middle? Wait, we'll see some of that, and then some of that we won't see in these lessons, but it's out there. On the other hand, so I've talked a lot about what we haven't done, but we did get a lot done from that basic outline. We do have some management information, things we communicate, and the Project Manager software did help us to articulate and clarify the plan. So we now know some of what's going to happen when, and it is just a great starting point, and that was the intention. So I'm at the end of this presentation. Thanks for listening. Happy project planning. I'll see you next time.